Thank you, Eva. Dear guests, dear Minister Budrys, on behalf of our partners, the province of Limburg and the city of Maastricht, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all this evening to the third Princess Beatrix Lecture. This lecture series was born out of a remarkable heritage. In 2018, the Maastricht Treaty that helped lay the foundations for today's European Union was awarded the European Heritage label, recognizing not just a document, but an idea, a shared legacy of integration, citizenship, and cooperation. It is in this spirit that Studio Europa Maastricht, together with Maastricht University, the province of Limburg, and the city of Maastricht, established this lecture series in honor of Her Majesty Princess Beatrix, whose lifelong commitment to European unity reflects our own institution's dedication to education, debate, and public engagement. Princess Beatrix has long symbolized a bridge between ideals and action. Her encouragement of European integration, especially among young people, continues to resonate today in a continent that still grapples with profound challenges, from security threats to shifting geopolitics, as we have just noticed. Tonight, we are honored to welcome as our keynote speaker His Excellency Kęstutis Budrys, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Lithuania. Lithuania is a shining example of how European integration brings strength, opportunity, and solidarity to individual nations and to the entire European community. At Maastricht University, as the European University of the Netherlands, we take great pride in educating students from all over Europe, including many from Lithuania and the Baltic states. Their presence here tonight testifies to one of the Maastricht Treaty's greatest achievements, the ability to build bridges across borders through education, science, and shared citizenship. And yet, as we look around today, we know that these bridges are not always enough. We face challenges that go beyond scientific cooperation and cultural dialogue. Issues of security, resilience, and collective defense demand more than goodwill. They demand strategic foresight. Minister Budrys is uniquely positioned to address these challenges. With deep experience in national security as Lithuania's former Chief National Security Advisor and now as Foreign Minister, he has worked at the highest levels to build cooperation across Europe, to defend our shared values, and to prepare for a future that may not always be predictable. In his lecture titled Building a Case for a Stronger, Safer, and More Resilient Europe, View from Lithuania, Minister Budrys will draw on his rich experience to reflect on the legacy of the Maastricht Treaty, but also on how today's evolving security landscapes urges us to deepen our strategic coordination and unity. This moment is deeply symbolic. Here in Maastricht, the birthplace of a treaty that envisioned a more integrated Europe, we gather to explore how that vision must evolve. We do so with respect for our past and with responsibility for our future. Dear guests, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Minister Budrys.
Thank you all, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. What a great honor to be for the third Princess Beatrix Lecture in Maastricht, a place that rightfully embodies Europe's cultural richness, intellectual openness, and spirit of cooperation. Being here offers a meaningful opportunity to reflect on what unites and what drives us Europeans forward as we work to build stronger, safer, and more resilient Europe. In 1992, during Dutch presidency of the Council of European Communities then, 12 European states signed Maastricht Treaty establishing the European Union. Lithuania back in 1992, the EU seemed more like a dream than like a real promise. Lithuania was celebrating then its international recognition, having joined the United Nations only in August 1991. There was not much to celebrate then. Our constitution was in the process of being drafted. The first post-Soviet parliamentary elections were still to be convened. The Soviet Union was dissolved, but we had to negotiate withdrawals of thousands of former Soviet troops from our territory. Our economy was no longer commanded by Moscow, but it was still based on state-owned companies which could not operate to compete in the global free market. Lithuania had unstable temporary national currency, and our real income were dropping down drastically. Back in 1992, undeterred, Lithuania has proclaimed that joining the newly born EU is our priority. There were not many who believed that Lithuania will be able to join the EU, and even less to no one believed that we could do it into the next 12 years. And yet we did it. Our post-totalitarian political transition and European integration were two mutually reinforcing processes. Today we have a democratic political system with checks and balances, with left and right parties that successfully compete for the government. We have a well-trained armed forces. We have the NATO infrastructure and bases in Lithuania. We are a member of the OECD and the Eurozone. Our economy grew more than 400% after 2004, after the membership in European Union. And our projected GDP growth for this year is 2.5%. High-level visits, such as the historic visit of Her Majesty Queen Beatrix in Lithuania in 2008 and of His Majesty King Willem Alexander in 2018, have accompanied and emboldened us on this path. Lithuania is a living proof of the power of the promise of the European Union, the promise of the Maastricht Treaty. Other European states, like Ukraine, like Moldova, like Montenegro, like Albania, seek to repeat the success of Lithuania and other member states who joined EU in 2004. It shows that Lithuania is a perfect example of European integration, and Lithuania feels obliged to help them, as we were assisted by the others back then in the 90s. Therefore, we are a staunch supporter of merits-based further EU enlargement. At the same time, Lithuania is committed to defend the European project from the threats it is facing and to support deeper European integration. For us, the Maastricht Treaty is more than another political and economic project. It entails a commitment that Europe would no longer be a scattered group of nations, but a community responsible for its future and its security. Maastricht Treaty tells us security is shared, prosperity is tied, and the dignity of nations is not negotiable. Today, perhaps more than ever before, it is clear European community based on the Maastricht Treaty is not something given. It is dependent on the European nations and individual choosing, anew with every generation and every challenge to live, work, learn, trade, negotiate, and celebrate together. I would like to dwell on the challenge posed by Lithuanian and EU neighbor, Russia. Russia's brutal aggression against Ukraine has fundamentally challenged the European project of peace, bringing it back to its very roots. It has shown that peace is a choice and that still there are countries, including in the European neighborhood, that choose confrontation and war over cooperation and prosperity. This has changed the very way in which Europe has been used to think about peace and security in our continent. Ukraine's fight is a fight for the cause of all European states, who have chosen the peace. Every Ukrainian soldier defending Pokrovsk, Kharkiv, Odessa is also defending Vilnius, The Hague, and Lisbon. This is why when the Netherlands commemorates May 4th, the Remembrance Day, to pay tribute to all the civilians and the military who have sacrificed their lives to protect Dutch independence, we may also commemorate all those Ukrainians who are fighting for their freedom and ours. They are paying the ultimate price instead of submitting to the aggression. And it is my deep conviction that Ukrainians are right. Concessions would only encourage further undermining of peace and aggression against Ukraine and other states. Russia's war against Ukraine is also war against European project. It is based on imperial thinking and the goal of weakening Europe. On operational level, European project has successfully interfered with Russian plans to dominate the neighborhood states and prey on them. On strategic level, European project per se demonstrates an alternative to Putin's vision of the international relations, which is based on the pre-Maastricht Cold War model. Russia's hybrid warfare against EU has begun quite some time ago. The aggressor is skillfully using unconventional hybrid tools which are quite often under the radar of international law but cause serious harm. Lithuania and other neighbors of Russia are dealing regularly with GNSS spoofing and jamming, airspace violations by drones, fighter jets. There were quite a few incidents against critical undersea infrastructure in the Baltic Sea. Russian ally Belarus has previously attempted state-sponsored instrumentalized migration. Now it is using hundreds of smuggling balloons to complicate air traffic in Lithuania. Damage of the oil pipeline was also tried as disruptions of the gas supplies, just to tick the box of economic coercion. Acts of arson and sabotage take place, like an explosion in November on a key Polish rail link that provides military aid to Ukraine. The trend is clearly growing stronger to divert our attention from the critical situation in Ukraine, undermine the unity of the EU and solidarity in the face of the common threat. In 2026 alone, Russia will double its funding for television propaganda to more than €1 billion per year. And it will be used for spreading disinformation in European elections through media manipulations, cyber attacks, and propaganda. Here comes the main question of the lecture today. Is the EU fit to respond to Russia's challenge? Direct conventional war against the EU candidate country and hybrid warfare against EU itself. Regarding Russian aggression against Ukraine, the EU has justified Russian fears of being the most capable international organization to help Ukraine through so many tracks: military assistance, restrictive measures, trade measures, political, diplomatic, and economic humanitarian support. Europe leads the charts in terms of aid to Ukraine, and Ukrainians trust the EU overwhelmingly, more than anyone else. However, our overall military support is slowing down, as it was mentioned in the panel before. While the price Ukrainians pay with their lives every day isn't getting any lower, it's growing. This must be reflected in the figures of our support, with the responsibility shared among the partners more evenly. The EU must maintain and intensify pressure on Russia, not only through new sanctions, but also by strengthening our defense capabilities, closing remaining loopholes, and battling Russia's propaganda and disinformation globally. All relevant EU sanctions regime must remain in place and be further expanded. It is one of our most effective tools to constrain Russia's war economy and limit its ability to sustain large-scale aggression. At the same time, we must get rid of our remaining dependencies on Russia, and especially in energy field, and ensure that Moscow remains isolated in international arena. Moreover, the question of accountability for Russia's aggression and its war crimes must remain high on our agenda. The aggressor must pay for the damage it has caused, and the EU has enough levers to impose it. While supporting Ukraine, we must also support and reinforce the rules-based international order. Russia must be held accountable for all crimes committed in Ukraine, from the crime of aggression to war crimes and the forced transfer of children. Therefore, Lithuania has proactively supported establishment of international mechanism to ensure this accountability. The Special Tribunal for the crime of aggression, Register of Damage for Ukraine, and I'm honored to tell you that just a few hours ago in The Hague we have made another step by signing the convention that establishes International Claim Commission for Ukraine. It will be an administrative body that reviews, assesses, and decides on claims of compensation of damage, loss, or injury caused by international wrongful acts committed by Russia in or against Ukraine. Lithuania encourages all states to join these initiatives. Without accountability for crimes, there will be no sustainable peace, nor can we ensure the well-being of people. As for hybrid warfare against EU, increasing economic, social, and cultural resilience is the main countermeasure. Even now, a few EU countries still remain dependent on Russia economically, especially on Russia's oil and gas. In 2024 alone, EU countries spent almost 22 billion on Russian LNG and oil, fueling its war machine. Lithuania has proved that reducing dependencies is costly, but possible and economically viable. Starting from May 2022, we do not import any oil, gas, or electricity from Russia, relying on diversified supplies through Klaipėda LNG terminal and electricity interconnectors with Poland and Sweden. Thanks to our infrastructure, we may also deliver US gas to Ukraine through Poland. Looking ahead, Lithuania's energy strategy aims for self-sufficiency and renewable-based growth. Solar and wind, that would ensure green transition aligns with our industrial policies. At the same time, Lithuania will continue to invest in energy infrastructure and the protection of critical infrastructure. Also, Lithuania has introduced a robust investment screening system to protect our critical assets. This system provides for the screening of transactions and capital flows originating from the countries assessed as posing national security threats, notably Russia, Belarus, and China. Long-term planning and consistent work identifying vulnerabilities and reducing external dependencies is needed. The EU has started, but late. A common approach to economic security has only begun to take shape in 2023 with the adoption of EU economic security strategy. 2 weeks ago, communication on strengthening EU economic security was announced with the goal to move from assessing the risks to proactively reducing strategic dependencies, ensuring that our common reaction is swift and preemptive, at the same time remaining a credible and reliable global partner. Dependencies on Russian oil and gas and the revenue stream they generate must be ended by coordinated EU repower and US sanctions efforts. For the EU to be resilient, we have to invest more in our civil society. A well-developed civil society enhances the performance of democratic institutions and countries' resilience to hybrid warfare. When civic norms and engagement networks are weak or they are absent, hostile countries have a great opportunity to spread propaganda, undermine citizens' confidence in their government. We need to be more proactive in our communication. For example, confronting Russian-speaking audiences with uncomfortable truth. From Lithuania's experience, during the disconnection of Baltic states from Russia's controlled electricity grid, the interinstitutional framework was established and it was used to inform the public, to monitor information space, and to effectively respond to disinformation. Our Riflemen Union, journalists, academia, NGOs are actively helping institutions to monitor disinformation narratives and communicate Lithuanian strategic messages, both locally and globally. Among EU tools, the European Democracy Shield includes a few concrete proposals, such as setting up European network of fact-checkers, adopting a protocol for online platform operators that could be activated in a wide scale, the establishment of a European Center for Democratic Resilience. The EU versus Disinfo webpage provides solid knowledge of how foreign information manipulation and interference operates. We need to develop response strategies beyond debunking and promoting our own narratives. Regarding cultural resilience, the crimes of the Soviet Union have not yet been adequately recognized and condemned. This allows Russia to distort the truth and use history to justify aggression. We must stand united in defending historical truth and nurturing a common European memory by condemning all totalitarian regimes. Europe must fully acknowledge European history and recognize the dual totalitarian legacy, Nazism and Stalinism, and ensure that European history is thoroughly studied and commemorated, demonstrating the EU's commitment to never repeat the past. In this context, allow me to recall Jan Twartstendijk, the Dutch honorary consul in Kaunas in 1940, who has now become the cornerstone of modern Lithuanian-Dutch relations. By issuing life-saving visas, he enabled thousands of Jews in Lithuania to escape death. His actions, carried out on Lithuanian soil under extraordinary circumstances, forged a bond between our nations and transcends diplomacy and is rooted in our shared humanitarian values. Finally, we are facing the truth that the burden regarding European security will be redistributed between European countries and the United States. Moving towards the 5% defense investment target agreed at the Hague NATO summit will be beneficial both for EU defense industry and NATO deterrence posture. It requires a massive investment over a sustained period, but it is both necessary and it is doable. Defense expenditures in Lithuania next year will reach 5.4% of our GDP. And deterrence works. Since the launch of NATO's increased patrolling activity, Baltic Sentry, in the Baltic Sea, there have been no further incidents against critical undersea infrastructure. More than 1 year already. Given the urgency, we cannot fail to boost capacities of US defense industry. Recent EU decisions on boosting national defense spending send a clear signal to defense industries to expand their production capacities. However, we need to ensure geographical balance and integration of small and medium enterprise into the production chains because it strengthens the entire ecosystem. This not only reduces dependence on few large players in Europe, but also creates new opportunities, boosts competitiveness, and supports sustainable long-term growth. While ramping up EU defense industry, it is important to maintain flexibility to procure from our strategic partners and NATO allies, including United States, United Kingdom, or Canada, or other like-minded third countries. Flexibility is important as urgency and time constraints require swift solutions to address looming capability gaps. Not to mention, Ukraine's experience offers essential lessons for the EU on protecting critical infrastructure from Russian hybrid and cyber attacks. Sharing of experience and coordinated action are indispensable to strengthening EU resilience against escalating threats. While Europe also is increasingly taking greater responsibility of its own defense, the reality is that the threats and challenges we face require a strong and united transatlantic alliance. Thus, the need to maintain NATO unity, our greatest strength and Russia's main vulnerability. Unity means coherence in decisions, strategic messaging, and actions. Close EU coordination with NATO should focus on increased interoperability, full adherence to NATO standards and capability targets, and based on the single set of force principle. Early in 2017, the first Dutch soldiers started arriving in Lithuania as part of NATO's enhanced forward presence and have been with us forever since. We are grateful to the people of the lower lands for their strong and steadfast support to our joint security and defense. Finally, for the continent to find a way to stop Russia's imperialism, it needs to act now and enhance its strengths by a comprehensive strategy of containment, not only to deter, but to actively constrain its hostile intentions. To achieve this, we must maintain NATO unity, increase defense investment, and curb Russian influence in other parts of the world, where they are active in Central Asia, Caucasus, Middle East, Sahel, India, Latin America, High North. Russia is a common denominator in activities against Western interests everywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I am about to conclude. The EU has stood to Russia's challenges and it will overcome it. I truly believe in it. I am honored and proud that it is in this critical moment Lithuania is standing together with other EU member states like Netherlands. Let me share with you the striking words by His Royal Highness King Willem Alexander back in 2018, which we recall very warmly. Your security is our security. Your freedom is our freedom. Your future is our future. These powerful words go both ways, from Lithuania to the Netherlands as well. European strength, unity, and resilience is neither an empty nor a general concept built on dreams, idealistic assumptions, or out of touch with reality. Among others, it is built on the very practical day-to-day, people-to-people contacts and strong bilateral relations between specific countries in the political, economic, cultural, and other fields. This is why I am particularly delighted to address you all here in the Netherlands, because I am not only convinced that our relations are excellent and get stronger every day, but because I also believe that they stand as an example for others to follow, and also for students like many of you here today to analyze. Her Royal Highness Princess Beatrix of the Netherlands has helped us bring both our bilateral relations and European integration where they are today. Her advocacy for European unity, for the dignity of smaller nations, and for responsible integration forms part of the moral inheritance, a moral resilience of Europe. Europe was built not on uniformity, but on unity, not on fear, but on commitment. And it was built by people who dared to imagine that cooperation could solve crises and wars. Let us ensure that our solutions are worthy of the challenges we face. Europe's future is not predetermined, it is chosen, and it will be chosen by us, Europeans. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for that very powerful and invigorating speech. I feel optimistic.
Optimistic.
Yes. What a year it has been, and it must have been quite a day for you as well today. How are you, first of all?
Busy, as always.
Yeah.
And dedicated and motivated. I really believe in what we are all doing.
Yeah.
I really believe in what we are doing today in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
With the signing of the convention with which we are establishing International Claims Commission. This is truly one of the strong cards in European hands in these current negotiations. Accountability. As you've seen in the first 28 points, whatever they are real or not, maybe they were food for thought. But anyways, one of the points there was that all the claims are waived. And there will be amnesty for all the crimes that were committed during the aggression against Ukraine. So our immediate reaction within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was no, it cannot happen. Accountability, that's where we should press the point, and this is what prevents us in the future from it being repeated.
Right. So you feel like, at least on that point, that has been entrenched. That can no longer be taken away.
And this is how we are implementing it.
Right.
We're not only talking about it. We're establishing the Claims Commission. They will work with all the registered damage claims that is already being done. And we will take, through the frozen assets, those billions, and we will pay Ukrainians back. This is how we are implementing what we are talking.
Right. We're not quite there yet with the frozen assets, but I will ask you about that later. But I love your optimism. President Zelensky was also there.
Yeah.
Did you manage to speak with him?
Not with him, but with
Right.
Andrei Sibiha, the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Yes, we had a chat.
Anything you could share with us?
of course, my first question was, Andrei, how it went in Berlin? Because that was yesterday. And
that's what we want to know too.
Yeah, that's where they came from with President Zelensky.
Yes.
He was not overwhelmingly optimist, but he said that there is a momentum here, and that we can use it. And
just for context, a momentum in terms of
negotiations,
negotiating a peace deal.
That it can be reached. And of course, we all know where is the question and why we don't have this peace deal already. As Ukrainians agreed with unconditional ceasefire back in March 11th. That was the day of the regained independence of Lithuania. That's why I remember the date. They said, okay, unconditionally, we agreed to the ceasefire. Russians, they said no, and they are continuing. So whether they will change this time their position, that's the only one factor that it depends on. That's the Americans. Whether they put the pressure on the Russians and will say that, look, this is now that we should make it. Otherwise, there will be all the secondary sanctions as the Americans were already threatening Russians back from May.
Yeah. Many of your European colleagues and counterparts were also there today in The Hague, I assume. It's a tense week.
Not many, yeah, but there were. Yeah.
Enough, several.
No, country-wise, there were 35 that were signing the convention. That's a good thing. Now we have to ratify it and make it, make it working.
Right.
But what concerns ministers, yes, less than they were yesterday in FAC.
I'm just curious about what is the atmosphere right now. It's a tense week. There's a European Council summit coming up, precisely to discuss funding of Ukraine, the use of Russian frozen assets. Yeah. Does it feel like an important week to you?
Not to everyone. Yeah, of course, it feels hugely important for me.
Yeah.
But not to everyone. And this is the problem of us in Europe. And I think that there is there is some, I have two working hypotheses, sort of, on this. Whether we see the weakness or strength in relation with the peace differently, meaning that whether we think that appeasement might work with Russia. It never worked in 1,000 years of history of Russia, but maybe this will be the first time when we have to take it slow and don't rush, don't escalate with Russia. Maybe this time they will stop. Or maybe we see the very final results, what we want to achieve differently. Because I cannot explain why we have different opinions on what has to be done right now. And those are three things. Those are three golden cards into the hands of Europe and into the hands of Ukraine. These are the frozen assets, or if you want to take 200 billion, that means that we can finance at least a couple of years of Ukraine's defense efforts. The second, this is the accountability, the true one. And the third element, this is the EU membership. As not as a promise, sometime in the future, maybe now we are okay with this idea. No, but with the very exact date that we can all agree. And agree on it this Thursday within the European Council.
Why do you think it's so hard to get through to your Italian, Belgian colleagues? Because I assume that's who you're talking about when you say that it's not clear to everyone. What is it in the
I'm afraid of the answer that I have some indicators, floating around, that there are some other interests there. Once again, those 28 points, whatever it is, they are not real. But anyways, there was one point, how to share those 200 billion. 100 billion to one side, another 100 billion to another side. It can be snatched from just under our nose. In upcoming weeks, if we will not do, something about it. And it is to do something is to use this elegant scheme that was suggested by European Commission. Right. We wrote two non-papers. I present two non-papers to FAC in spring, then it was in the late summer about the risks related to frozen assets and then how to use them. And the second one was about the economic and financial risks. And I remember that still Germany was not very comfortable with it. But when Chancellor Merz said that, okay, we can handle financial risks, and whom else is more interested in stability of euro than Germany, and we see all its industry, they said, okay, we will do it. So how anyone else in Europe can say that, no, you won't deal with it. Or there will be some other, bigger consequences to us. So I think that we still lack of honesty in this discussion. because I see no alternatives from where to get the finances.
A lack of transparency, honesty. You're hinting at some kind of backhand deal. Do I understand you correctly?
There are some, maybe there are some other ideas floating around. Yeah. But I hope that this Thursday all my concerns will be pushed away and we will have the conclusions of European Council by our leaders that yes, we are moving forward.
I'd love to press you more on this, but unfortunately I have to move on. Let me just rephrase the same question I asked our panelists earlier. The International Institute for Strategic Studies, this is a British think tank, estimates that Russia could pose a direct threat to Europe in, or as soon as 2027. There are other estimates, some people say a bit later, sooner. Are the Baltic countries, is Lithuania ready for such a threat, do you think?
I started my career more than 20 years ago, that was back in 2002, in intelligence service.
Yes.
I started as an intelligence analyst, and there was a training in the very beginning for intelligence analysts.
Just like RPM.
Yeah, I know. And we had a very great cooperation with your intelligence service, AIVD. So during that training, there was, the risk assessment as one of the things that you have to learn. So in the risk assessment, there are two parts. There is the threat assessment and there is vulnerability assessment. So within the threat assessment, we know that what the Russians' intents are. I have no doubts that they haven't changed from 2021, what Putin wants to achieve here in Europe. And then the capabilities part. So when we assess the threats, intentions, they're there. On the capabilities part, we know that the major ones are now within the Ukraine territory right now. More than 600,000 strong land forces. And we know that they employed heavily there. And they cannot rebuild those capabilities and fill the structures, the new structures that they're building towards the Western strategic direction sooner than the couple of years after the ceasefire or there is a peace deal. So there is one part. And we cannot make the scenarios only based on the threat part, because there is vulnerabilities part. That's about us. So what we are doing, we're just sitting and waiting and hoping, or we are investing and building our own capabilities for the sake of deterrence.
What's your answer to that
deterrence by denial. So our answer is invest. Go and do our homework. And I really listen what Americans are telling us. And this time when the Deputy Secretary of State was in Brussels for the NATO Foreign Ministerial meeting, and he was just quoting the presidents from Nixon, each president after Nixon, who was telling to Europeans, go and do your job. Take your burden. And we were not doing this. So in Lithuania, we're doing this. And this is how the number 5% popped up in Lithuania. So we made the plan for the strong national division, fully operational at the 2030, and then we calculated, so what do we need to spend to get there? Because this is the really big, maneuver force. And the answer was from 5 to 6% of our GDP annually. Yeah. And that was before Trump, and that was before Trump's 5%. And we decided, okay, let's do it. We can make it if it helps us, and it would help us for any operation together with the German troops, with the Dutch troops, and with American troops that are now within the country. We can hold our territory. That was our idea. So what it takes us, we have to spend. Okay, of course it is the big cost for it. When we had just a debate on our budget for the next year, you think it was easy? There was only one line that we were not negotiating and we were not fighting about. That was support to Ukraine. 0.25% of our GDP goes to Ukraine for the next year. All the other, of course, there was a tension. And then also around the defense spending. But these are the priorities. Now, this is the existential priority, to spend more on defense, to be the reliable ally, to provide the host nation support to all the troops that are there, Dutch troops that are in Lithuania, and other troops. So this is how we approach it. Then there is no time for us to wait, because otherwise this period of peace will shrink. It's about us.
I will come back to this in a moment. In your speech, you mentioned transatlantic ties and the importance of these transatlantic ties. You also mentioned Belarus. So Lithuania last week, I think it was last week, right, declared a state of emergency yes. over these balloons, large balloons flying in from Belarus. This week, the EU broadened sanctions against Belarus to include hybrid warfare, yeah. The thing we were talking about before. At the same time, the United States is lifting sanctions of Belarus, and its president is swapping friendly letters, let's say, with Alexander Lukashenko. How does this fit into your coherence in decisions? The thing you mentioned in your speech. How does this fit into unity and sending a united message?
The very goal of President Trump's administration and of the Special Envoy John Cole is really a noble one, is to get all the political prisoners out from prisons in Belarus. It started with the release of U.S. citizens from prisons, and then it scaled up. There is more than 1,300 political prisoners in Belarus, according to this. It's 1,300. Yeah, but that's counted that there are triple of this size of the ones that are not declared political prisoners. To be political prisoner in Belarusian prison, this is worse than to be criminal. You will be treated as the subhuman. And what the Americans try to achieve, they try to get those people out from where they are right now and stop prosecuting the new ones. And in the last release, there were 2 Lithuanian citizens. We are telling them, don't go to Belarus. There is even the big sign at our border, don't go there. And the ones that have the relations with Belarus, they still go. Like those 2 poor guys that went there. And they were accused of extremism and put into jail for years. And it can be extended. So what Americans are doing is a good thing. The methods that they are using and the lifting of the sanctions, be it any other country, I would say this is nuts. Don't do this. We saw Lukashenko going in these circles all the time. Elections, then we have the human rights violations that goes down, and he uses charm offensive, and he gets back on the international stage, and it goes like this. But and we were not able to fight it. Americans, yeah, maybe this time they are in a better position to do this and use this leverage to reach the goal. And the goal is the release of all the prisoners. Till it's not there, I cannot say that it is successful already. We see the way forward, but it might be that Americans are lifting sanctions and the European Union is increasing sanctions on Belarus.
Right. At the same time, rights activists also say that new people are being imprisoned every day, and as long as Lukashenko is in charge, yes, this will just continue, and he will continue to take people hostage. I'll move on, though. I was listening to an interview with Jens Stoltenberg, the former NATO Secretary General, the other week, and he gave a bit of a mea culpa. He said he felt that after 2014, it was clear that more should have been done to arm Ukraine. He felt that he should have maybe done more to raise the alarm, but that most NATO allies thought that that was too dangerous and was going to provoke Russia. And he said, we didn't arm Ukraine, and then Russia invaded. This week, there was a summit in Helsinki of frontline states, including Lithuania, to figure out how to request more funding for defense, right? Yeah. For frontline states having to face up to Russia. Do you feel like we're going through some kind of déjà vu moment? Are the Baltic states, is Lithuania now in the same position that Ukraine was in 2014? And do you feel like NATO and also Europe generally has learned its lesson when it comes to solidarity and actually arming countries that are more at risk of a potential Russian incursion or invasion?
No, I do not feel that we are like Ukraine in 2014. We are within the alliance. We are within the alliance with you. And being an ally, that's the most intimate relation the human being can have. This is the promise to die if it is needed for our joint cause. If we are fighting, we're fighting together. This is the promise. And you go in a church like this and tell your spouse that you will be together till the end of the days, you are not promising to die. And for the allies, that's what we promised to each other. And Ukraine, they didn't have any allies.
Right.
They had the false promise of 1994 of the Budapest Memorandum that went like an ear out, and that was it. And we are within the alliance. So the day when Russia, when Putin won't believe in our unity, won't believe in our Article 5, he will test it. This is how deterrence works. And if we don't believe in it, if our adversary doesn't believe in it, if our numbers are not showing that we are ready, it will be tested. This is how it is. So I truly believe in alliance. I had no doubts during my more than 2 decades of career from what I've seen. I see where our gaps are, and we know where our gaps are. We wrote the regional plans, showing how we would fight if it is needed and defeat Russia. And we know what capabilities we need to do this. And built on these demands, there were NATO capability targets written down and shared to all the allies. You have your package, I have my package, and I do my homework, and I hope that all the others are also doing their homework. This is how deterrence will work in the future. So I do not feel like sometimes I see this projection on the Baltic countries, on the frontline nations, from Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, going down, Romania, and so forth, as some helpless nations that are afraid of the enemy behind the gate and so forth. We do not feel like this. We know what to do, and we know what would work. Everyone has to do his homework. This is what it is.
Absolutely. I didn't mean to suggest that, by the way. My question was about solidarity within the European Union, about, for example, spending, the fact that frontline states are having to spend more on defense.
The debate now is about strengthening the front line.
Correct.
And about building the resilience, whether we fund it on the budgets of the frontline nations, or whether we see it as the common investment. And then we use the new budget, 7 years budget for it. So from our perspective, what we are defending there, it's not only EU border, meaning not only Lithuania's border, that is EU border.
Right.
And EU airspace, and EU, at the end, values. That is what it was with the instrumentalized migration. That's why I'm convinced that we have to use the joint financing for it.
My question to you was exactly about that. Is that message getting through? Do you feel like that message is being heard?
It takes time. It takes time. It's same with the defense spending elsewhere. And I'm hearing this argument that, for example, Russian tanks won't cross Pyrenees, for example, in the case of war. Maybe they won't. But the missiles will be everywhere, the industries will collapse, the European Union will collapse, there will be no euro, and yes, maybe your roof won't be destroyed, but you will lose your job, and you will lose your lifestyle as you knew it. So that would be the economic, social catastrophe. And we know the recipe how to avoid it. This is the deterrence. Spend a bit more today, and we will be safe for tomorrow.
I want to open up... Let's have some questions from the audience. Rules of etiquette, name and question, please. Let's start with you with the...
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Mr. Budrys, thank you very much for the lecture. I just did my little homework by taking some notes during the lecture, and I have a question on how to tell the urgency of committing to the Dutch and European Union citizens. Netherlands' former Minister of Defense, Joris Wolfhoeve, has written a book, Ware Moed, where he talks about the 2 potential war outcomes. If Ukraine is only sympathized with, around 7 to 12 million more refugees will come. And if not helped, Ukrainians would step over the borders wearing Russian uniform.
What's your question?
Story? My question is it a good story that would touch European narcissism from citizens' perspective?
That is not only the story, that is one of the scenarios that we really want to avoid. And that's why I truly believe that only EU membership can prevent all these bad scenarios from happening. I have no doubts that in Russia they bet on some social, political turmoils in Ukraine, maybe some civil war, some unrest, and then there will be millions of veterans returning homes, and they would want to see that they still have the chance in life, that they can get a job, that they can create the life, and if there will be the tough conditions, if we will leave Ukrainians to themselves, with the economy destroyed, with the lives destroyed, with the relocated people. Internally, there are more than 6 million people relocated in Ukraine. They will see the challenges. And definitely we want to avoid the scenario that is happening in Georgia right now. After 2008, I remember I had a small daughter then, and we went with with her, with trolley to the rallies in Vilnius, to the streets to support Georgia then. There was Georgian flags everywhere in Vilnius. In 2008, in like last year, 2024, we see that they're backsliding, and there is less democracy left. And this country is just repeating and emphasizing Russian propaganda. So this is the scenario that we want to avoid. And what is the tool of prevention of it? This is the EU membership, for your own sake, because otherwise there will be more and more troubles. And coming from Ukraine, from the land that was for 4 years beaten by Russian nightly attacks, and then by the front line that goes 1,000+ kilometers. So that's why it's your interest, it's my interest to have Ukraine within the EU. Because there will be someone that will have to pay for those forces, 800,000 or 600,000 strong, that would be ready to defend from the very first centimeter within the Ukraine. Because otherwise there will be no such forces. And politically, if they won't have the strong institutions, if they won't go through the reforms that we went through, if they won't fight corruption in Ukraine, there will be no bright future for Ukraine. And that's why I'm open about it. That's why I know what I'm talking, because we've seen it all in Lithuania. Be it corruption, be it weak institutions, be it Russian interference. We are the only nation and country in Europe that impeached our president. And that one of the reasons was because of his relations to Russian oligarchs that paid for his presidential campaign. That was back in 2003, the elections, and the impeachment in 2004, the year when we entered EU. So we went it through, and I know what Europeization means. I know what means strong institutions, civil society. And I know what Ukrainians need if they want to be with us, and we want them to be with us. So that's why I think this is the story, also Lithuanian story to share and tell and convince that Ukraine is important.
In one of the leaked versions of this 28-point peace plan, apparently it said that Ukraine would get EU membership by 2027. Do you think that's realistic?
I think that technically and legally we can make it. Of course, they won't be ready for it. Just to give you a number, and for example, they have to amend 500 laws to be, just to get the acquis into their legal system. And their current yearly turnover, is 150 in the best year. So that means amount and the scale of the work that has to be done. Of course, they won't be ready, in a normal way. That's why we have to speed up. And it's our rules at the end of the day. We created them. And
You're saying we should soften the rules, maybe.
It's not to soften the rules, but we can, put up front the date, bring them in, support them, and then make some conditions for the further integration. We can separate the, industries, agriculture goes there, single market there, and as we had, as Lithuania had, all those periods of integration. We can make it. It's about the will. If we would agree that, okay, let's put the date, 1st of January 27. It means for Commission, go to work. Everyone, go to work. Find the way how we will organize it, and we will make it. And Europe proved that we can do this. Look how we were operating during COVID crisis, or how we were operating in the first months of the full-scale invasion, and in 2022. We can do this. We're strong.
Let's have another question. The lady over there, yes.
Visų pirma, norėčiau Jums padėkoti už gražius žodžius
Ačiū Jums.
Jūsų mintis. My question would be, and I will try not to sound too critical, but given our current situation in Lithuania with the government issues, with the balloons, with culture, what kind of message are we sending to Russia and to our European partners when it's difficult for us to solve our own problems, internal problems?
That's the message that they want us all to digest. You have internal problems. Look in your backyard. Why you're involved there? Is it your war at all? It's like there are two nations that are fighting. They have historical relations. Almost brother nations. Do your job. And this is the message related also to the hybrid activities and attacks against us. This is the message that they want to spread out when they are doing sabotage operations. You are not safe in your homeland. Why you have to be involved somewhere else? Of course, it is not related to the real internal political issues that we have, or be it the external pressure on us, but what concerns Belarus and these smuggling balloons, that's for sure, to put pressure on us. When we saw that is happening, and I was then in 2021, for me that's a comparison of situation in 2021 when instrumentalized migration started. I was then still with my intelligence service. When it started, it was like a big one. We didn't have a fence. We didn't have the CCTVs. We have the 700 kilometers long border with Belarus, so you can imagine. It's like a real long. It's go back and forth through all the Netherlands. So when we saw it, what is happening, that was moment, okay, we will be hit. But then the other thought was, at least in my head, so same I see in the balloon situation, it will take us around 2 months and we will get through it. This is what happened actually, with the assistance of European Union then, reaching out to the nations that were sending the people to Belarus, with the financial assistance, with the mobilization of our companies. We built this fence of 700 kilometers long in less than 1 year. And then we put all the sensors on it, and then we covered it. Same with the balloons. We will deal with it. There will be the technical solutions how we will, get them down. And we will become stronger from each of these situations, and also from the current ones. What concerns the overall political landscape, of course, there is a wave of radicalism in Europe, and that is obvious. And we are under the pressure. And then seeing the forces and especially Russian investments into our elections, this is something that they are betting on, to change the governments, to change the attitude. There are assessments that for the Moldova's election, the current Moldova's election, there was up to 1 million euros worth investment from Russia's side to change the result. I don't know what you can do with 100 million euros in Lithuanian elections, especially with our very strict regulation. But this shows that for them it is important. So next year, 26, that will be Armenia, for sure. June, they have elections. Pashinyan must lose his job. So he will invest. So Putin has to invest. So if he is investing in these neighboring nations, how you should be sure that he is not investing into this country or into other country where elections matter?
The problem is, right, it's so, sometimes you can prove it, as was the case in Moldova, and sometimes it's very difficult to pin down the evidence. I know, because I've tried. And it's hard to separate what are internal problems or from outside interference sometimes. So
we had the president 21 years back who was financed by Russian money and his election campaign. There is nothing new.
Right.
Were financed also by Russian money. Because they use the same toolbox all the time. It's about us, how resilient we are. So our solution in Lithuania was just to cut off all the external money and all the internal money for the electional campaigns. Be it organized like it is in the United States, in Lithuania's legal system, that will be illegal at all the levels. You cannot do this in Lithuania. And the reason is because of the Russian money, because of the kickbacks, because of the corruption that we had. So that was our decision, to keep it clean. Now what I see with the social platforms being used also as the way to send the narratives, we will have to solve it. And we will have to discuss how we are preventing it being used against us. That is inevitable, because this is something fundamental that we have to defend, our elections.
Next, someone else? This sir here with the glasses.
Hello, my name is Mark Duursma. I'm from Dutch newspaper NRC. I have a question about public opinion in Western Europe. Yesterday, Politico, Eva's outlet, published a poll.
Thanks for the plug.
Yes. And it turned out that, especially in France and Germany, more people than in UK and US are in favor of scaling down support for Ukraine. And other polls show as well that public support is declining, especially in Western European countries, not so much in the Baltics, of course. But does it worry you? Well, part of the problem in the Netherlands might be that we don't have any politician who's advocating, defending Ukraine as passionate as you do tonight. But what should politicians do? What's the solution to this?
This is. Thank you for your question. This is the strong argument for the frozen assets and reparation loan. And actually, that's my main argument. Show me the alternative money and show your dedication. It's not about the Netherlands knowing your numbers, they're really high, but seeing the Kiel Institute tracker that was mentioned earlier today in this panel. So we saw that it's going down. We see that the numbers are going down. Second half of this year is really worsening and concerning. So looking into the next year, of course it will drop down. We see the tensions in our budgets and also with the pledge to increase defense spending. That will be more difficult for everyone. So as it is, as I said, as it is in Lithuania, also tough with the budget. But in our understanding and in our security policy priority list, support to Ukraine is one of the essential parts. Because if they fall in one way or another, it means that we will have to spend times more than we're spending, with the support. And seeing the overall, the map of the spending, comparative and absolute spending in numbers, Nordic, Baltic, Germany, Netherlands, for sure, Poland, actually that it is. When you look more south, the numbers are really low. And what Ukrainians were telling us not once that even those numbers are even less than the pledges are. So someone promises, but this support is not coming. How to change the very narrative? I think that is each case it is individual. In Lithuania we don't have to do it. So in our case it's more than, we have the recent poll, more than 60% of the population that think that we have to support Ukraine with what we do right now. But I think that it's also the case of the political leadership. You just have to go in and do it. And also look for the other solutions. And that's why, once again, we're returning to reparation loan.
Yeah.
Because we have to deny the possibility for Russians to outlast us. They also see these numbers. They see this support is dropping. You are tired. You want to, to all end. We also all to end. We know this is the Russian propaganda. We know the peace recipe. Just stop supporting Ukraine. Leave it to us.
But are you saying, in a way, quick, let's use those frozen assets before our own populations start becoming a problem? Oversimplifying, but...
I think that now it's the right thing to do because of the many reasons. Financial needs is only one. Strategic needs, what I said, we need the strategic cards for Europe to be at the table. What else do we have? Security guarantees? We don't. We have coalition of the willing that Lithuania is part of, but it's not strong enough. We need US backstop. Finances, Russian assets. This is the strong argument for the upcoming years. And yes, now is the moment. Be it, this spring, 26, I think that will be too late. I think that, they will be taken from us. I'm really afraid of it.
Anyone else? I think we'll do 2 more questions. I'll just give it. Is that okay? Yes. The sir in the back with the blue shirts. Just wait a moment until we can get a mic your way.
Thank you for your passionate speech. I'm Lano from SEPS, from a think tank in Brussels. I think we met once at the house of the Lithuanian ambassador to the EU when you were still security advisor.
Oh yeah.
We were discussing, or intelligence about Russia, which I was surprised you said I'm the only one who knows a bit about Russia. In Lithuania, meaning as an intelligence person, let's say, which leads me to the question. Is it not more important to strengthen cooperation at European level within Maastricht, the city of the CFSP, not only of the MU, rather than increasing defense spending? We're now all increasing defense spending, but not in a coordinated fashion. Is it not more important that we do it together as Europeans? Which leads me to my second point. Is believing that the NATO alliance will protect us not an excuse not to strengthen European defense cooperation? And is the Article 5 of the NATO not dead?
It's a bunch of questions, I feel,
Yeah.
in one.
So I'll start from the Article 5, and then I will move to our defense spending and then how it goes in line with our CFSP and the decision making. If Article 5, if you have the idea, you know, that in the back of your mind that Article 5 is dead, and if you think that Russians also have this same idea, then it is dead. This is how it works. And if we cannot trust in the smooth implementation of all the plans that were written for this day of aggression, it means that we won't have the very strategic things for our defense. And those are related to United States, if we are talking about the transatlantic relations in here. And these are the enablers, and these are the extended nuclear deterrence, and these are the troops of United States, and all the support that they're providing. If this is dead, we have to sit down and rewrite what we are doing in Europe. And for me, the item number one will be, so whom from all of us here, not here in this room, but around the EU table, will take the burden and provide the extended nuclear deterrence for all the others, in the scale that can meet Russians, and in the scale, political scale, that Russians would believe that, okay, this is true, this is happening. Or maybe not one, maybe there would be 2 or 3 nations, because this is the key. I do not believe deterring Russians only by conventional forces, as they already coerced us in nuclear way back in 2022, in the autumn of 22, when they thought that, okay, things are going south for them. And that was the old narrative built about the dirty bomb that might be used against Russians, and that maybe the tactical nuclear weapon could be used in Ukraine. So we need this. So for me, this is the question then. And then knowing all the strategic landscape, why we are not discussing then it? If we think that transatlantic alliance is, not effective anymore. I don't think that. I think that is effective and running from everything that I see. I see that we have to take our burden on European shoulders, what the Americans are telling us. And this is how I'm going to the spending part. Just one example and one number. Our business elite, that didn't trust our political decision. That was back 2 years ago when I was a national security advisor and was in talks with them. They were telling us, this national division of yours, maybe it's not the right thing. Maybe we should do something else, maybe more drones, maybe more air defense, but not these land forces and so forth. And this is when they, just collected the money and asked one of the companies in the United States to run the series of war games. And there were really interesting findings. How Lithuania can defend together with allies, and how fast, and with all the Russian forces that we know. Actually, their finding was that with a fully operational division in our land forces, with the German brigade together with all the other flags, and then also Netherlands, and also with the Americans that are already in Lithuania, we can hold our territory for at least 10 days. We can deny the territory for 10 days. And this was the mind opener for our business elites, that, okay, we can do this. How much? And what concerns the price tag, only for Lithuania, 1 day of fight means 4 billion worth of ammunition. That's for our forces, 4 billion per day. So these 4 billions we shouldn't have in a bank account. We should have it in the form of ammunition and stocks and everything that is needed in our warehouses. That has to be built. That has to be of the 5th class of the strength. That is a lot of concrete. We have to invest. That's my answer. We cannot fight with papers. And what I've seen from my career, knowing how Russians are seeing us, they don't believe our concepts, papers, doctrines, whatever we write. They believe what they see. And that's why we have to put our forces and on the front line. We're in the right place where the Dutch forces are, where you came with your air defense. This is how it works. And only then when we have it, then we can talk about the European more autonomy, we can talk about the European elements of it. Now we don't have it. And it won't be, it won't last only for a couple of days when we are thinking and planning about the war efforts. And we will need immediately a lot. And we know how, what our conditions are with this, what concerns stockpiles. When we cannot provide missiles to Ukraine, when they need it immediately, like tonight, and when we don't have it. So we have to produce more. So this is my answer. What concerns the unanimity on the foreign policy, yes, this is frustrating. On the one hand, we're talking about the European Union being as the geopolitical actor. Knowing the numbers, we're paying for everything. Gaza, European Union is paying. Bain Sahel, European Union is paying. You name the crisis, European Union is paying, and billions going to all the direction. What we get, in defense of our European interests for it, how we are projecting our interests there. We are not, and the problem is because we cannot make the decisions. We are just stuck, and we are stuck with the unanimity, and it's growing and growing and growing, and we have to, to discuss it, because otherwise we will be irrelevant. This is the problem. And now, with the ongoing negotiations, we're also raising the question, so where is the European Union? Where is our common foreign and security policy represented? At which table? How we should be organized?
The price for being stuck is irrelevance, is what you're going to say.
And we know that we all read national security strategy. We know how China is behaving with us. Everyone in the world would love to see us separated and as the individual nations. And to see European Union as the strong bloc, as some superpower economically, politically, and militarily, is not in the priority list of the others. And for me, this is another reason why we should do it. I truly believe in it. Otherwise, I don't believe that we can last long being the separate nations. Talking about economic warfare, for example, it's not only in the military one.
Minister, can we get you to answer one more question,
Yeah,
as I
good.
promised?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Let's have this young gentleman.
Tai visų pirma, labas vakaras.
Sveiki.
Good evening. So you already touched upon this, but my question is, to what extent is Lithuania prepared to defend itself militarily against Russia in case of an invasion? Ačiū.
Ačiū. There are a lot of Lithuanians here. Yeah, I love it.
Can we get a show of hands?
Now there
quickly?
was another one with the bow
Oh.
tie with the
There you go.
Kęstutis. Okay, so it's even more impressive. Yeah, I love your bow tie. And answering this, the military part I already covered. That is NATO. If it is not NATO, we have to go back and rewrite everything that we do. But there is another part. That is not non-armed defense. And this is the resilience, and this is the whole of society approach. Back in office of the president, we wrote the state defense plan that had 7 parts in it. One was armed defense, and we just left it to the armed forces, and it is classified. All the other parts are not classified. And these are about how our government will continue to function, how our society will get the critical supplies, what will be our foreign policy and the communication with the world, what will be our internal mobility of the people organized, what will be with the law enforcement, all the other elements. And it's easy to think around what would be in the case of the war, but it's really difficult to build a system. And we were smart ones. We just took it from Finland and just copied, all the major parts and put it into our plan.
That is very smart.
Yeah, it is, because they're good, and it's a good thing, to take all the best things from allies. That's why we are sharing our experience with Russians in so many fronts. When we did it, then we organized the series of tabletop exercise sort of. Invited NGOs and invited business companies, and not all the areas, but in the main one. And I remember, the faces of the people that were around the table, and we were telling them, look, we think that we will organize, I remember food supplies was the topic. We will organize the food in this way. You know, and the scenario is we have the borders blocked and you know, isolated from the sea, for example. You cannot organize the cargo, these sort of things. And there is the military activity in this region, and people would move, you know, to the center of the country, for example. So we the governmental institutions, think that this is the right way. And I remember one of the CEOs of one of the largest producers of the food, he said, that is absolutely nonsense. It won't work like this. And we thought that, okay, we will use the trucks, you know, from there and there. And they said that, look, more than 90% of our trucks are out there in the Western Europe, you know, doing cargo there. There are no trucks like here. The answer was that you can hallucinate, you know, in the governmental offices how the world functions, and it will be different in the time of crisis and the war. So for us, the lesson was, like, bring them in. Same with NGOs. Who knows better where are the socially vulnerable people in the municipalities? The NGOs that are working with them. Of course, the municipal office might know, but you know, all the others, they are dealing with it. So for us, that is the huge experience, the new experience that we're building now in Lithuania, preparing the society. And this is how you build the engagement of the organizations. This is how we decided to organize the commandant's offices within the municipalities. We will need a lot of people to protect our critical infrastructure, to protect bridges. So now municipalities are organizing themselves. And you know what it brings to the society? The calm. Because the most dangerous thing that you can have, and the most disturbing thing and disorienting thing, this is uncertainty. I remember myself, that was January 2022. I remember that, you know, the days when we thought, okay, something big is coming. There will be the huge war. We don't know where it will end. It started with the full-scale invasion in Ukraine 1 month after it, but that was absolutely new for me, at least, for my family. And knowing what it looks like, I remember myself in April 2022, that it was okay, now we can orient ourselves. Same with the crisis or war or anything that can happen. When people are preparing, they feel, you know, more ready, more involved, and feel more calm. Then is the time when you can tell, okay, yeah, we can do this. And this is how you mobilize. That's why I believe in this whole of society approach. Once again, it is easier to say and to, you know, to postulate about it. It's difficult to do. So now, but now I have the question, you know, to anyone who has the plan for the time of the, you know, for the civil part for the time of war. Have you shown it, you know, to any NGO, like a real one? Have they read it and they said that it would work? This is the criteria for me, for the seriousness and you know, and the real life test. And I know that some of the nations are doing it. And you cannot become Finland in half a year when they did it in the decades. But we can do this. And all those lessons that we will, you know, learn through the process, you know, doing, learning, testing, we will share with everyone. And that will be another recipe how to build resilience.
That's a promise, right? We
Yes.
have a lot of witnesses.
Yeah.
Do you feel more confident? Perhaps. Ringing endorsement. Thank you so much, Minister.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Budrys.
That's my
Thank you
honor.
so much for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
And of course, thank you also to our panel members, the ones that are still here. Thank you to Studio Europa Maastricht for organizing. And thank you to all of you for being here and asking such interesting questions. There's lots still to discuss. So I hear there's maybe an open bar. There are drinks close to the Christmas tree. Go forth and enjoy and to continue to discuss. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.